to say that HIV and AIDS must be eliminated to save the lives of the individuals, including the very old and the very young, whom the virus is presently destroying. Thank you. I've been well, dear friends, in the race. Thank you.
As I come, ladies and gentlemen, I'm called Moses Supercharger. The person who has lived, microphone please, that the topic we are discussing is one of the biggest challenges we face as people living.
People living with HIV, and yet they are fighting HIV. And when he gives you an opportunity or a facilitation, he thinks that actually he's doing you a favor, forgetting that there are two groups fighting and the affiliated government organizations. You are not doing enough. You are complaining of stigma, and yet you have not cleaned up your house. Let us give you a song, a quick one. Give us the song.
Prevention must be the golden rule. Let them know. Stop the suffering. Let them know. Stop the misery. Let them know.
We are facing new elections every day. Mortality in my country is striking bad. And funding for the service going down. I'm calling on my people wherever you are. We are stay up the best to stop new infections.
Prevention of HIV. Prevention is solution number one. Our leaders, young people, must be the golden rule.
Easy. And the message I'm passing to those who have not got infected yet: don't get HIV. Don't look at this Supercharger and think, thank you for clapping. One more you class. Don't look at Supercharger and say, Supercharger looks nice, Supercharger is working. It's a day to look like this. But these tablets, I must take them when I'm close to the washroom. Every time I take them, I get diarrhea. Do you want to live like that? No. So don't get HIV. There's so much money the government and the international partners are spending to buy us medications, could build roads. So don't get HIV so that we can cut down the what? The expense. Please join us. Where are the candles? Wait.
The candlelight of the multiple events happening in the country, these are to be postponed and it energizes us to continue the fight against HIV and AIDS.
Let's light the candles and sing in harmonies to remember people who died because of HIV. Jinemi Supawa, Jitante Monesara, Yonna Bigende, Edibana Faba Bazawa. Let's light the candles and sing in harmonies to remember people who died because of HIV. Jinemi Supawa, Jitante Monesara, Yonna Bigende, Edibana Faba Bazawa. Struggling every minute while caring of the children you left behind who were kids. You left this one like rain from the parting sun. Memories of your smile created big cracks in our hearts. Let's light the candles and sing in harmonies to remember people who died because of HIV. Jinemi Supawa, Jitante Monesara, Yonna Bigende, Edibana Faba Bazawa. Let's light the candles and sing in harmonies to remember people who died because of HIV. Jinemi Supawa, Jitante Monesara, Yonna Bigende, Edibana Faba Bazawa.
before you start having problems, which you may live with all your life. Why don't you wait, hold on, you study, finish your degree, and then you look for a partner at the right.
If you are pregnant, go for antenatal care services at a
End AIDS in Uganda by 2030. Take the HIV test with your partner today.
Fellow services.
For advice and more information, please call our toll-free line on 0800.
Ladies and gentlemen, it appears Dr. Nakwagala is not in. Justin has a disability, so
for me, I appeal the government to put a strong litigation, sensitize people at workplace. Because since I finished my studies, whenever I go for an interview, I used to declare myself that I'm positive living. Then people, they used to ignore it, but also that one, she's disabled. Again, she's HIV positive. Then I said, what can I do? I consoled myself. I started to start self-employment. People I used to ignore to come at my stationery, but I managed to go to feel self-esteem. Like people that used to come, by then the lockdown come up, I lost my car business. Now I allow the office of President and stakeholders, since there is an opportunity for work, they engage people with disability because we have the potential to do each and everything. Thank you.
let's give Justine another round of applause. It takes a lot of courage for a young girl like Justine to come out and declare her HIV status to the world. But you can see Justine is also visually impaired. Justine is physically disabled, and Justine is living young people who find themselves in challenges. Because if she can be able to face the challenges, I think many other Ugandans.
Our gathering here today, to me, is more a symbolic. We have a department of OSH. It is Occupational Safety and Health. And we inspect, and one of the things we look out for when we're inspecting is the workplace policy on HIV and AIDS. We inquire on how many people are infected, how many people are living with HIV, and what that particular employer is doing to help prevent, treat, and care or support these infected people. And the Employment Act also talks about workers' compensation in instances where maybe a medical practitioner is infected while working on a patient living with HIV, they can be compensated. The ministry is also reviewing the national policy of HIV and AIDS, which was approved by Cabinet in 2007. This policy has been in place for about 14 years now, but it lacks a lot of things. For example, lack of investment, of HIV and AIDS workplace policies, stigma and discrimination that we are talking about right now, and also limited financing and support for protection, treatment and care. There is also weak institutional capacity with MDAs to plan, implement and manage or also coordinate these interventions. Workers, employers, and also the people looking for jobs. And this policy, when it is approved, it's being reviewed right now with different stakeholders. But when it's approved, it will also help the other employers to guide, it will guide them on some of the key priority areas where the employers will pick out from that national policy and then incorporate those in their own policies at work. And HIV and AIDS, related and other forms of stigma and discrimination against people living with HIV and AIDS in the whole world of work. The priority number 3 will be provision of social support and protection of HIV and AIDS affected persons within the world of work. Number 4 will be strengthening systems of HIV and AIDS affected persons within the world of work, especially in areas of governance, infrastructure, human resources, and research.
Someone else, me and you, we gotta stand up and fight. We'll share the light in the fight against hate. Let's come along, let's come together, fight hate. We open hearts, let's stand up and speak up to the world. Take a stand and follow to the end. With open hearts, let's stand up and speak up to the world. We'll save some lives, save the children of the world.
Who dedicated their lives to helping people living with and people affected by HIV/AIDS in their various capacities. I'd like to thank you for the continuous mobilization of government, development partners, civil society, and the media in solidarity. While it is true that Uganda continued to battle successfully against HIV/AIDS, we need all sectors to deliver traditional shifts in terms of strategy and investment has now come, so that Uganda will regain its position as a leader in terms of response to HIV. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had 40 years with HIV, and now it's COVID-19. Uganda cannot afford to continue business as usual. The cost of not acting differently will be very high. As we journey to June 2021 high-level meeting on HIV/AIDS, where world leaders will pronounce themselves on critical milestones for the next decade of action, Uganda must not and will certainly not put down the torch lightning to pass towards reducing the new HIV/AIDS infection. Our unwavering support goes out to governments, non-governmental representatives, and communities, because these last miles is the most challenging. HIV/AIDS for people affected by HIV/AIDS. This is an opportunity for me to congratulate the AIDS Commission in Uganda and other actors for their efforts. Development partners will be with you, but first, national efforts is Dr. Maxim, another round of applause. May I therefore take an opportunity to invite His Excellency
for me to participate for the first time in my life in the international. Important when looking forward to seek the way out of the crisis, also to look back, to see where we come from. Uganda comes from very far and has covered a lot of ground. I was here in Uganda at the European Union delegation from 1993 to 1997. And I remember very well how hard Ugandans fought a new and unprecedented crisis, which had emerged just a few years before. President Museveni successfully led the fight against an elusive but devastating enemy, and he did so supported by few partners. One of them was the European Union. There are different ways to contribute to what you're doing, but let me give you a little example of what was done in those years. In the late, simply evident, and public health programs were started everywhere in the world. The key strategy in Uganda was based on reducing the risks by targeting all segments of the population through the so-called ABC approach to sexual behavior. A meaning delayed sexual debut for youth. A, abstinence. Then partner reduction, the reduction of number of partners. B, be faithful. And then finally, information regarding condom use. C, condoms. This was the meaning of this acronym ABC, which was very much used in those days. I don't know whether it's still used these days, but I remember that very well. All these elements contributed in different proportions to the remarkable reduction of HIV/AIDS in Uganda at a time when HIV/AIDS in the world were escalating so quickly. The key point was that the devastating impact of HIV/AIDS was acknowledged at the highest level in government, and prevention programs were established across the country by land ministries as well as by non-governmental organizations. That was so important for us and for Uganda in those days. That was the very beginning of the crisis. These are success stories going back a few years ago of people, friends, and countries fighting together to address a common global problem.
1980s. We're here today to both remember those who lost the fight and to recommit ourselves to keeping the light on HIV until it is no longer a public health threat. I'm proud that the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which you may know as PEPFAR, has been and continues to be at the forefront of the AIDS battle here in Uganda and globally. PEPFAR has invested more than $4 billion in Uganda alone and more than $90 billion worldwide over the past 18 years. Over the past 18 years to save more than 19 million lives. That's 19 million children, women, and men who continue to provide a source of light and hope to their families and loved ones. 19 million people who have the opportunity to pursue their dreams and to achieve their full potential thanks to our joint efforts. For the last 18 years, we have come a long way in the fight against HIV and AIDS, but we still have work to do. This year's theme for the Candlelight Memorial event here in Uganda is Freeing Workplaces of HIV/AIDS-based Stigma and Discrimination. For those of us in an urban setting, this may be interpreted as companies and offices, but only a fraction of the workplace are in offices. This year in Uganda and worldwide, many who previously had formal workplaces are now working from home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and many more work in informal sectors every day during the pandemic, and continue to do so. What's on here today is freeing our homes, communities, countries, and the streets in the world of the HIV/AIDS stigma and discrimination. Years ago, it was understandable that HIV-driven stigma and discrimination were widespread. The disease was not understood. It was infecting people and causing death at a rapid rate. There was little hope for a cure or successful treatment and prevention strategies. And HIV was impacting millions of people around the world in every way imaginable. That is no longer the case. Although we have not yet found a cure for HIV and discrimination, policy actions that establish or increase criminal sanctions against these high-risk groups will only further decrease opportunities for prevention, testing, and treatment. If we are to truly address the problem of stigma and discrimination, we must set aside our judgments of others and reaffirm the inherent dignity and fundamental rights of all humankind. Rather than casting those vaccinated, please do so. As Secretary of State Tony Blinken said, no one is safe until we are all safe. Finally, I am pleased to inform you that just last week, the 18th PEPFAR Country Operational Plan for Uganda was approved.
Forum. Today we are privileged to have Honorable Minister with us. Commissioner Honorable Judith Agiet. It's now my singular honor and pleasure to invite you.
We don't have one light.
This is candlelight. Candlelight day, this is candlelight.
The honorable members of parliament, when we remember a day like this, we reflect on a million of people here in Uganda and globally who have died of HIV/AIDS. We are here to stand in solidarity with those who are living with HIV/AIDS. HIV/AIDS has affected everyone, no matter their status in society. Almost every home in this country experienced the loss of a loved one or knows somebody who died of HIV/AIDS or is living with HIV. For many of these families, the memories of the departed ones are still fresh in their minds. Uganda was fortunate and blessed with a visionary leader, His Excellency General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who raised Ugandans to confront the HIV epidemic when it was first discovered. He did not. You remember on the onset of the epidemic, many countries did not want to talk about HIV/AIDS for fear of loss of the so many activities, for fear reduction in various industries like the tourism industry. But the president stood up and said that if you're coming for tourism, then you have to stick to your terms of reference. And if you divert, you can encounter a lion in the jungle. And that is how Uganda managed to sail through to fight the epidemic. And Uganda registered early successes because of his exemplary leadership and passion to save these people. The theme for this year is HIV stigma-free workplaces in Uganda, journey towards ending AIDS by 2030. I'm happy to inform you that this year, Uganda decided to focus on the workplace because many of us spend most of our time at our workplace on a daily basis. It is therefore important that the atmosphere at our workplace is conducive for one not only to be productive, but also for one's mental well-being. Stigma may not present with obvious physical signs. A person who experiences stigma may look fine, like they are coping on, but on the surface, while beneath, they are suffering. Stigma may therefore lead to damaging and far-reaching negative effects on both our physical and the mental well-being of those affected, especially people living with HIV/AIDS. Discrimination and violation of their rights may lead to loss of confidence and failure to seek help and medical care. Indeed, fear of stigma and discrimination is cited as the main reason why people are reluctant to be tested, disclose their HIV status, and consistently take their ARVs. This results into increased new HIV infections and a higher number of AIDS-related deaths. Stigma and discrimination of people living with HIV/AIDS continues to persist because of lack of information and spreading of false information. This is the same fear that people had in the 1980s when very little was known about HIV/AIDS and how it is transmitted, which made people scared of those infected due to fear of getting infected. This fear, coupled with other reasons, made people falsely believe that HIV infection is as a result of personal irresponsibility or moral fault that deserves to be punished. And we've had testimonies of people who have lived with HIV/AIDS for over 30 years. We have Major Lualamina Iranga here. We have Moses Nsubuga, Supercharger. He has lived with HIV/AIDS for over 26 years, and others. So it is just a matter of believing in yourself, and life continues. Look at how many people have died of COVID-19 pandemic who did not have HIV/AIDS. And look at those who have lived with HIV/AIDS for all those years, and they are still here living. So it is us to fight the phenomenon of stigma. No matter in society. They do matter and even do better, or even better than those people without HIV/AIDS. Let us get together as a country and globally to fight HIV/AIDS. When we talk about ending HIV/AIDS by 2030, and yet there are some things that we are not addressing, then we are deceiving ourselves. We are embracing testing, counseling, and the treatment. But there is one issue that we have to look at: prevention. Prevention, prevention, prevention. If you address the issue of prevention, then we are sure of ending HIV by 2030. Sexual relationship. Then we have to know the terms of reference. If you're a young man, a young lady, for those who were not born with HIV/AIDS, and you get a sign of having a partner, then know what to do. Those are the terms of reference. Stick to your lane. Don't panic. Don't do things in a hurry, and you'll get there. Let us address the issue of prevention, and it goes with behavior change. With HIV/AIDS in a befitting manner. This needs a change and must be addressed immediately. As we embark on global goal of ending HIV/AIDS by 2030, we need to end stigma first. Each and every one of us here present and Ugandans out there should take a personal reflection and commit yourself to ending stigma. I want to thank NSSF for partnering with Uganda AIDS Commission this year. To all the people, for the Christians, Jesus was a good example of this time. He ate from the bad and will make correct decisions. For each one of us, including the people living with HIV/AIDS, let us commit ourselves to stopping stigma. I therefore urge you to use available means, including social media, mass media, to disseminate messages. Before I conclude, I want to allay the fears. We've tried as much as possible to encourage communities to appeal with the issue. The President has called for an urgent meeting of the members of the National Task Force COVID-19. He will guide us on the way forward. But I want to urge Ugandans not to panic. It is true we have a new strain from India. So it is upon us to adhere to the guidelines that have always been told to us by the Minister of Health and the President himself. It is not an issue of panic, but let us do what we are supposed to do.
Under the Office of the President, Candlelight 2021, the theme, HIV Stigma-Free Workplace, #End AIDS 2030. The camera people will direct us. I think we shall stay where we are, and then the picture is taken. You don't have to move away from your seats after signing here. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Maybe one at a time, to avoid the crowding. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Pakichi. Thank you so much, Dr. Maxi. Okay, we are going to have all the party organizations.
Omukyala Kikira abantu b'Esseronko mu Parliament ate nze mbadde chairperson oba ssentebe ow'akakiiko ka HIV mu Parliament. Jo twalabye ku mawulire oba twawulidde nga Secretary Dr. Diana Atwine owa Health nga agamba nti tuyinza okufunayo ate lockdown endala mu maaso eno gye tugenda kubanga ate COVID akyankalanye alabika ayiseewo ate variant gye batugamba oba ekika ekizze kirabika kizibu nnyo. Kati nze nga omubaka ate ng'omukulembeze abadde akulembera akakiiko ka HIV mu Parliament nalabako kukyaliwo ku lockdown eyayita abantu baffe baayisibwa bulala. Embeera zino ez'akawuka ka siriimu abantu bakyazoogerera bannaabwe ne babayisa bubi, abantu bakyatya okubyogerako. Kakati nze mbadde nsaba nti Ministry of Health etuyambe nti omulundi guno babeere nga batwetegekedde abantu abalina akawuka ka mukenenya. Bannange batuyambe tubeere nga tulina ebifo bye tusobola okugyamu eddagala. Emmere oli yatuyisa bubi nga tetulina maanyi gagenda kwekolera mmere kubanga ate tulina kugenda wala ate nga baatuggalira. Abamu tuli banafu, ababooda abatuyamba tebaliiwo, takisi tezikyakola, abantu bakyatambula. Ate namwe mukimanyi nti akawuka ka mukenenya omuntu baba bamuyisizaamu amaaso oba nga bamutidde kye tuyita stigma nga tasobola kwogera ku nsonga ze. Kizibu nnyo okugamba omuntu ate n'abamu osanga nga n'omwami n'omukyala mu nju tewali amanyi munne bw'ayimiridde. Kati ekiseera kyatuuka ng'omuntu alina okubuulira omulala ate ne kireeta n'okulwanagana mu nju. Kati nsaba Ministry of Health ebeere ng'etwetegekedde abantu baba balina okugenda okukebera akawuka kenkana ki mu mubiri. Kati ako balina okuggyako omusaayi be bamanyi ababikola. Alina okugenda okufuna eddagala lye, alina okubuulira ku basawo engeri gy'alimu okusinziira ku bbanga ly'aba atutte nga tali mu maaso g'abasawo. Kale nsaba Dr. Atwine batutegekere abantu bano be bagenda okufuna eddagala lyabwe, tuleme kuddirira mabega. Twagala okwebaza President waffe through the Presidential Fast Track Initiative yali atandise omulamwa guno nga gulina we gutuuse kituyambye, naye kati gye tugenda eno bwe tunaba tuyingidde mu lockdown endala tuyinza okuddirira emabega neyanza obukulu nti buli omu yeekebeze amenye bw'ayimiridde kubanga bw'ogenda okekebeza akawuka ka siriimu abasawo abali bajja kukubuulirira. Bw'oba okalina bajja kubuulira engeri gy'olina okwerabiramu, bw'oba tokalina era bajja kukubuulira engeri gye weerabiramu. Kati ekisookera ddala kwekebeza. Bw'omala okwekebeza tandika okubeera mu bulamu obw'okwegendereza ng'omuntu kubanga amateeka gonna ne weeganaavaayo nga Parliament nti yakoze amateeka, President ne bw'anaavaayo obulamu obubwo omuntu asooka obukuuma yeggwe. Kale nze nsaba abantu bonna nti tubeere beegendereza. Twogera ku COVID ssaawa ena siriimu bamusirisizza naye mbeegayiridde ono alinga omusota ogutambulira omusota okufaanana n'omuddo naye nga mwe gutambulira mpola mpola nga tewali agutegedde. Kale nze kyensaba nti buli omu agende yeekebeze amenye bw'ayimiridde ate alabirire obulamu bwe n'obwegendereza. Nze Wamala Namboze Florence Mayoga omukyala Kikira abantu b'Esseronko mu Parliament.